to the official podcast at ContentChampion.com. Join our heroic quest to discover truly epic content marketing. Introducing your host, the content champion himself, Loz James.
Hello again, and welcome to episode 42 of the Content Champion podcast. Thanks for listening. First things first, if you're enjoying these interviews and want to know more about content marketing that works, don't forget to sign up for my email list at ContentChampion.com/updates. I'd also appreciate your reviews on iTunes if you value the show. Today, we're talking about how to measure the success of content marketing with one of the web's most popular, successful and experienced content marketers and SEO experts, Rand Fishkin. Now, I could say the usual here, that Rand is the co-founder and former CEO of Moz and the co-founder of inbound.org, but you probably know that already. I could also say that he's a highly creative online entrepreneur, likes micro-investing in startups, is a prominent figure on social media, is a talented blogger, podcaster, author, video presenter, speaker and seasoned traveller, who also happens to have given me beard envy with his magnificent moustache and facial finery. But that might be taking it too far and actually embarrass him. Because above all, Rand is what we call in the UK a good bloke, and has a level of humility matched by his extensive knowledge in all things online marketing. So I was honoured when Rand agreed to come on the show to discuss the often difficult subject of how to measure the success of all this content marketing work we're doing. Let's dive in. Thanks for coming on, Rand.
My pleasure, Loz. Thanks for having me.
Now, you're the high-profile founder and former CEO of Moz, best-selling author of 2 SEO books and co-founder of inbound.org. A master of content search and social media marketing, you're also a blogger, self-confessed startup junkie, and a frequent traveller. Quite simply, one of the best-known experts in the content marketing industry. There's no better authority than you to help us understand how to successfully measure our content marketing campaigns. But first, could you share your backstory with us, please?
Sure, yeah. I'd be happy to. So I went to college at the University of Washington here in Seattle, my hometown, and I actually dropped out of college only 2 classes away from graduating, which might seem like a waste, but I got into web design and development. So I built websites for the first few years of my post-dropout career. Struggled considerably to get clients and keep them, and eventually turned to SEO as a way to help our clients. They wanted websites, but they wanted websites that would actually help bring them traffic and qualified customers and boost their revenue. And since they didn't have money for advertising and we didn't have any money for advertising, SEO was a natural fit. So I started a blog called SEO Moz in 2004, which kind of chronicled some of my experiences learning the practice. It was a very, very challenging time to learn SEO. A lot of the information was not public. There were a few folks sharing, but not many. And over the years, SEO Moz, I'd like to think, became a resource for a lot of people who wanted to learn SEO and digital marketing from the organic standpoint. And then in 2007, we sort of switched our focus. We launched a set of software tools that you could subscribe to for, I think it was $29 or $39 a month at the time. And that subscription proved to be very popular with the audience who was reading the blog. And at the end of the year, we actually raised a venture capital round of $1.1 million with some local investors and set out to build our own web index, our own back end of Google, so that we could understand a lot more about how search engines worked and why people were ranking where they were. That effort worked out well, and over the next few years, the company grew many times over. We raised another round of financing in 2012, $18 million from Foundry Group in Boulder, Colorado. And last year at Moz, we did about $34 million in revenue. We've got about 25,000 customers and about 150 employees. So, it's gone from tiny little blog to, something kind of special.
It's an amazing success story. It just really highlights to me 11 years is a long time online. You've gone through such a lot, but it's not a long time in the big scheme of things, but so much has changed. I can remember Copy Blogger and your blog and a couple of others when I was a fledgling copywriter, sort of 2 or 3 years into my career. And look at what you've achieved in that time.
Oh, well, there have been plenty of painful struggles along the way, and it has not always been up and to the right, but yeah, overall, it's been a very, very educational and fulfilling ride.
Okay, a man of your experience, you're definitely the right person to be speaking to. I'm going to jump straight into what I call the elephant in the room. That is that you can't properly measure content marketing, so it doesn't really work. As a starting point, what would you say to that?
Well, the logic is fundamentally flawed. Things that we don't understand can still work. I think science has an imperfect understanding of gravity. I guarantee if you let something fall to the ground, it will drop. We have an imperfect understanding of brand marketing, but we'd all agree, I think every marketer would agree, brand works. We have almost no way to measure word of mouth, and yet no one would argue that word of mouth doesn't work. Content marketing is actually dramatically more measurable than any of those things. However, it is not perfectly measurable, unlike many forms of advertising. And I think this is actually true of almost every organic, non-paid channel, for the simple reason that the organizations who provide that traffic, right? So, whether it's Twitter sending traffic from tweets, whether it's Facebook sending traffic out from Facebook shares, Google sending traffic from search, they don't have a vested interest in helping you perfectly quantify and qualify and understand all of the traffic that's coming to you, unless you're paying for it. And so in the web world, organic channels, those that send free traffic you don't directly pay for, don't have that vested interest, and therefore it's hard to measure. But in my opinion, the harder something is to measure, the less competitive it is, and oftentimes the less crowded it is, and the higher ROI you can get when you do invest in it.
Okay, so content marketing does work. It is measurable. We know this, but I guess the mistake that many businesses make with it is believing that sort of content click conversion myth. Now, first off, what's wrong with this model? What should we be measuring? What are the key metrics and KPIs that actually matter?
Well, so I think one of the fundamental building blocks that we all need to understand if we're going to invest in content marketing is how the process actually works. And from that process, we can derive the metrics and the KPIs that we should be measuring and improving. So I really like a model that Avinash Kaushik from Google uses called See, Think, Do. And this basically talks about the stages of a marketing funnel, right? So you have a product. Let's say, Laws, that you're going to start selling a book online. All of your experiences from interviews and discussions with folks and all of this wonderful knowledge that you've gathered over the years. Now, most people in the field aren't going to know about your book. They might not even know about you yet, right? Your target audience, some small percentage of them know about you already, but you need to expand that. Now, once they know about you, they need to actually get into a consideration phase of whether your book is for them. That's sort of what they call the think phase. And then the do phase, which is converting, right? Actually making a purchase. And different forms of content and different channels for traffic are going to operate with different efficiencies and levels of conversion and amounts of traffic they send and which types they send along those different stages. Right? So you could think of social media as being very much the C stage, the way that people first discover you, find out about you, go read some of your content. And then you can think about that next stage, the think stage, as being how you might want to drive folks who actually have an interest in upgrading their digital marketing knowledge and thinking about their career path, getting more educated in the field. And then the do phase, which is, should I buy Laws's book or not? And those different channels can all be measured and then quantified. So you can say, how much traffic do I get from each of these channels, right? So raw visits. How does that traffic perform? Can I see when they come back, right? How many visits does someone take on average before they actually purchase my book? Which channels did they touch along the way? And then from that, you can extrapolate out, assuming you have a reasonable sample size, you can say, well, gosh, it looks like I get a lot of traffic from LinkedIn, for example, and none of it ever converts, at least on the first visit. But 3 or 4 visits in, which almost always involve a visit that comes from them signing up for my email or them searching for me in Google and visiting, then they convert. All right, well, I better pay a lot of attention to LinkedIn because that's the top of my funnel. That's how I'm getting people to see me and know about me. And then I need to be paying attention to search as a channel because that's how people come back to me. And I better pay a lot of attention to email as a channel because that's when people convert.
Okay, so If we look at it like a football team, a soccer team, they're all contributing these channels to scoring a goal. There's not just a lone striker. So
Yes.
how can we attribute a value to each of those different assists to determine an accurate return on investment at the end?
First off, I think I should be honored that you use the word soccer to describe football to an American or American like me. That's just thoughtful, really thoughtful. I really encourage folks to build a visual model of this, right? Whether it's on a whiteboard one time or hopefully in some sort of system that they can go back and look at again and again, something like an Excel chart, right? So that they can actually see, here's the contribution of each of the channels to each of these funnels, right? So I like breaking it up by first-time visits, returning visits, and then converting visits. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of the three that I put them in. It's oversimplified, no doubt about it, right? And it's imperfect as well. Many people will visit you on one device, and that's how they first learned about you, and then they came back, and you counted that as the first visit when in fact it was the returning visit. That's okay. We can deal with a little bit of messiness in that. But looking at that visual model, I think creates just a lot more awareness of which of these channels is contributing where and how much.
Okay, and if you're sort of trying to get buy-in with the C-suite, other parts of your team, other parts of your organization, attributing value just to content marketing can be problematic, can't it? Because other people might say, well, we did an event through the marketing team, the event marketing team, and that led to a load of direct traffic. So your content marketing team can't take all the credit for that. So I guess you have to have some buy-in with that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, direct traffic is always very, very challenging. But there's a very smart way to break it out. So social media apps in particular and plenty of traffic that's actually search is coming to you and misreporting is direct. And the best way to think about this is, the event marketing team did an event. Do you think anyone actually typed in the full URL of this piece of content after looking at that event, right? Like they went to our site and typed in lawsjames.com/blog/ the -best-way-to-measure-measure-marketing.php. No one typed that in. I guarantee it. So if you see direct traffic that's going to deep pages, content pages, that is misreported traffic that's probably coming from social media or coming from search or coming from a referral link or coming from email, and you simply can't, it's simply not passing a referrer. So I think breaking out the direct traffic that goes to our homepage, all right, you know what? I'll grant you that may very well be direct, and that might have been just from the event. But the stuff that goes to deep pages, that's not direct traffic. It shouldn't be counted as, oh, that's just our brand performing well. That should be counted as, hey, our content marketing efforts and our efforts in these other channels are clearly succeeding. We just can't perfectly measure them.
Okay, so you've got to be bullish about it and stand up for what you're doing, basically, within an organizational structure like that.
Hopefully, no one with a good head on their shoulders should argue with you about that. They all know no one types in long URLs. It just doesn't happen.
You're listening to the Content Champion Podcast, showcasing the best content marketing strategies across the web.
We're back with Rand Fishkin. You talk as well about online trust and authority. There's a great Whiteboard Friday on which this discussion is based, talking about how content marketing conversion works over time. And you talk as well about online trust and authority impacting those multiple conversion touch points, if you like. How important is that?
I'm a big believer that the experience you have with a brand, with a website, with a company overall, an organization overall, is going to impact your propensity to transact with them or to make a conversion of any kind. It's going to impact whether they get you as a regular reader. It's going to impact whether you're a fan and an advocate and an evangelist for them. It's going to impact whether you purchase something from them. And so, to my mind, anything that you can do to optimize and improve the perception of trust and authority around your brand, online or off, will have a positive impact on your marketing efforts and your conversion efforts throughout the funnel.
We're talking about mainly at the top of the funnel where that would have most influence, or like you say, at every stage that can have
every
effect?
Every stage. I'll give you a good example. I'm a big fan of this company called Beard Brand here in the US, based out of Austin, Texas. you may know or may not know that I have a fairly ridiculous looking mustache right now.
I'm looking at it right now in your Skype picture.
Yeah. On top of a beard. Anyway, I think I've made one or two purchases from Beard Brand in the past. But yesterday, I got an email from one of the founders, Eric Bandholz, who does some of their cool videos and has an amazing, amazing beard and mustache himself.
Yeah, I've seen that one too.
And so Eric sends me an email and he says, "Hey, Rand, I'm coming to Seattle. Is there any chance you have some free time in the afternoon?" And I can't tell you. I mean, that meant a ton to me. It meant a ton to me that he was, reaching out, that he knows who I am and wanted to connect. And we had a couple beers after work and walked around Seattle a bit. Just a terrific guy. Like, I was a fan previously, but I can assure you I'm going to be an evangelist and a frequent purchaser from that company for years to come. For as long as they exist and as long as my beard and mustache exist, I'm going to be a fan of theirs. And I think that speaks to an experience that we can all relate to. When you have a great experience with a brand, with people who are connected with a brand, that influences how you perceive them, how much you want to share and evangelize them, how you're going to talk about them in the future, and how you're going to buy from them.
It's very interesting because I wanted to talk to you about measuring content marketing success. And perhaps I've missed the point slightly. It is important, but you mentioned earlier on and just then the importance of word of mouth and perhaps the zeitgeist that develops around a brand and what they're doing for their customers and people just telling each other about it. When you're in that company, as probably happened with yourself at Moz, when things start to go well, you can't get an accurate handle on it, but you just know things are progressing in a very positive way.
Yeah. And part of that is recognizing that many of these kinds of investments are either unmeasurable or hard to measure, or the measurements are imperfect, and that's okay, right? I think one of the important things to remember is that until the internet era, marketers and brands spent billions of dollars on marketing and advertising without the ability to have the kinds of granular, perfect tracking that we do today. And if you work with an organization that, buys print advertising, buys outdoor advertising, buys television or radio, does sponsorships of events, all of those channels are not measurable, right? Very imperfect to measure them, much more so than anything we do content marketing-wise on the web. Content marketing-wise, we know how many people visited the page. We know how many people consumed the content, how much time they spent on average there, where they browsed to afterwards. Even if we can't perfectly quantify how many sales one piece of content led to exactly, we know things like brand lift and traffic lift and recidivism and all this amazing information. So to say like, hey, we're not going to invest in content marketing because we can't measure it. Well, then guess what? You only have a few channels that you can actually measure if that's your criteria for measurement, if your criteria is that high.
Okay, so you with your hat on as the CEO of Moz, if I came to you with all those metrics, with all the top of funnel, the middle of funnel, the marketing qualified leads, the sales qualified leads at the end, and I'd attributed a value to those, and you can show that workflow and show that you've been detailed with it and you've had a good go at looking at those multi-attribution channels, you'd say probably fair enough. That's enough to prove that this is going in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to be able to prove it a lot better than anyone who's investing in old school, offline, or TV, print, radio media.
And this brings me on to another point, which is, of course, you can't measure anything unless you're getting the traffic in the first place. You'll have nothing to measure. So what are the ways that you drive traffic that are still working?
We focus primarily, I'd say, on kind of three broad channels. Those are search, social, and then subscribers. And we think of those as basically being people who subscribe to our content via email, people who subscribe via feeds, and people who, the least measurable group, but people who sort of bookmark our blog or our regular content channels and come back on a regular basis. So all three are still driving very valuable ongoing traffic for us. Search is about 50 or 60% of our total traffic. Social is another 25 to 30%, and then the last 20-ish% is coming from those direct visits, email visits, Feedly visits, that kind of stuff. And I would encourage you to think about the ways you can earn traffic in this fashion. Who is your audience? Where are they online? who are the influencers of your audience? Not necessarily the people who you think directly will become customers, but the people who will broadcast, amplify, speak to your audience. Who's your audience listening to? And that could be media outlets, that could be journalists, it could be bloggers, it could be folks on social media, whoever it is. And I'd ask, where are they? And then I'd focus my efforts on those channels that you've determined have either your audience or your audience's influencers on them. And I would go in order of things that are at the intersection of, I believe I can do a great job with this, right? So maybe you're terrific at SEO, maybe you're fantastic at Twitter, maybe you do a great job with Facebook, maybe LinkedIn's something you're excellent at. And I'd go for the intersection of I'm good at this, or we're good at this as an organization, and my audience is actually here.
Gosh, you make it sound easy, but then from your position, I guess the point is it doesn't need to be hard. And, if we are measuring this and reporting back to C-suite members, we need to be just sure that we got our ducks in a row and not overcomplicate it and just give some clarity in those measurements so they can get some form of ROI calculation at the end of it.
Look, if I'm walking into a C-suite to make a presentation about where I want to invest marketing time and dollars over the next 6 months, right? What I'll say is, hey, we have not yet invested in, let's say we haven't started with social media yet, right? And so I'd say, we looked at Twitter, at Facebook, at LinkedIn, at Pinterest, at Instagram, et cetera, and we've determined that based on the demographics and psychographic makeup of our audience and our abilities to see those things in these channels, some make it harder than others, right? Instagram is a lot harder to quantify whether your audience is there than Facebook is because of Facebook's ad targeting product that you can get very specific on. So we'd say, hey, look, we think we're going to start with Facebook and LinkedIn because that's where we can quantify that our audience actually is and they're participating on here. Not only do they have profiles, they're spending time there. And we would like a 6-month experiment to go investigate and invest real time in earning traffic from these channels. This is our minimum bar where after 6 months, if we have not yet hit these metrics, we're going to stop those efforts and put them in another place. And say, what do you guys think? Does that seem like a reasonable proposal to you? Here's our stats on if we get traffic from social channels, which we get a little bit organically now, but we haven't invested much. This is how much it contributes to traffic at, the 3 stages of our funnel. Do you guys think this is worthwhile to invest in? And, maybe the C-suite's going to come back and they're going to say, we want to see more traffic from that if we're going to continue the effort over the next 6 months. Or we don't think you should put that much effort into LinkedIn because it looks like that number of our audience is just too small. Spend it somewhere where there's a bigger collection of our audience. Those are all reasonable things to have discussions on. I think what's not reasonable to have a discussion on is we want to see results in 30 days. Mm-hmm. Or we don't think we should invest in social because it doesn't convert, right? Those are really terrible, silly things to say as reasons. They're just not logical. What they mean is that a smarter competitor will get that traffic and will earn those conversions instead of you.
Moving on to looking at analytics, obviously Moz has a great suite of tools that we can use. There's also Google Analytics 2. What are your pointers here in terms of the mechanics of analytics software to measure our success?
There's some stuff that's gotten relatively sophisticated in the marketplace over the last few years. So Google Analytics can do quite a lot, and it can be very, very customized. That being said, when it comes to multi-channel attribution, it's not always terrific, especially across multiple devices, unless people are actually signing into an account every time they go to a different device. So you do have some options around that. 2 of the ones that we've looked at, and we're still actually using one of these, we looked at Kissmetrics and Mixpanel. We used Kissmetrics for quite a while, and we actually are still using Mixpanel. We actually also, Moz has moved over to using Omniture, which is extremely expensive, very complex, kind of a frustrating UI. I don't totally love the product, but our data analyst folks, they love it, right? They can get a ton more detail and data out of that than they can Google Analytics. It avoids some of the sampling problems that GA has. So I would say look for the tools that are right for you. If you're a small to medium-sized business, Google Analytics probably does most of what you need.
Okay, you're too modest then to mention your own products, so I'm going to give you another chance now. This has been a great conversation. Just before the PS question, could you remind us where we can find you online, please, so we can connect with everything you're doing and tell us about those Moz products as well, please?
Sure. Yeah, so you can find me at moz.com. I run a personal blog there as well at moz.com/Rand. If you want to follow me or chat to me directly, at RandFish on Twitter is a great way to go. And in terms of Moz's products, our suite is really about measuring and optimizing the very top of the funnel, especially for SEO.
Wait for it, listeners. Here comes the PS question.
For those listening who've heard what you've said, but they want to get started right after this call, where's the one place we should start with content marketing measurement?
I'm going to send you back to that blog post by Avinash Kaushik. He's got a really, really terrific model for content marketing measurement. It's the See, Think, Do model on Occam's Razor. It's a post from July 22nd, but it is just huge. Huge post, really excellent guide, walks you through step by step how to think about this stuff, and then actually how to do it right inside Google Analytics.
Well, that's great advice, because just as with your blog, when I found that one, I spent about 2 days sort of reading everything in a sort of blog fest. It's fantastic. Okay, Rand, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for your time, and all that remains to say is I wish you every success in future.
Well, right back at you, Les. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Content Champion podcast, available at ContentChampion.com, Stitcher, Zune, the BlackBerry Network, and on iTunes. Until next time, thanks for listening.